Top 5 Crimes That Shocked the World. Crime happens every day, all over the world. Anytime something tragic or shocking happens, no matter how or perhaps because of how far removed the situation may be from our personal experience of the world. Here are of those crimes, ones that left a forever mark. 1. The kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby. The original crime of the century. News of aviation hero Charles Lindbergh's son being snatched from his crib in the middle of the night was about as scary as it got in 1932. Despite the family having every resource at their disposal, the body of 20-month-old Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. was found 2 months later in a field not far from the family's New Jersey home. 2 years later, German-born carpenter Bruno Richard Hauptmann was arrested for the crime, tried, convicted and subsequently executed on April 3, 1996, having insisted all the while that he was innocent. Multiple books written in the 84 years since the kidnapping contend that Hauptmann, whose status as a working-class immigrant, particularly from Germany in the days leading up to World War II, did him no favors with the American criminal justice system, was innocent. His wife, Anna Hauptmann, spent the rest of her life trying to clear his name, alleging at one point that her husband had been framed from beginning to end by police desperate to close the case. So not only is this crime possibly still unsolved, but the government may have put an innocent man to death. The kidnapping terrified a nation, and newspapers pretty much flayed Hauptmann alive before he was even convicted. Spurred on by anti-German sentiment and major hero worship for Lindbergh, the police, the media and, ultimately, a jury that for the most part probably thought it was doing the right thing, joined forces to bring Hauptmann down, with even those higher-ups who believed in his innocence not being able to reverse the course of a system not interested in alternative theories. 2. The assassination of JFK. Who shot JFK? Most people accepted the answer. Lee Harvey Oswald fired the fatal shots at President John F. Kennedy from his perch at a 6th-floor window of the Texas School Book Depository in Dallas on Knopf. He was arrested hours later, initially for killing a police officer but ultimately arraigned for the president's murder. On November 24, Jack Ruby, who ran a nearby nightclub, shot and killed Oswald as police were escorting him toward an armored car that would take him to jail. The entire thing was caught on live network TV. Obviously, the murder of the President of the United States was a life-altering event for millions of people, shattering their sense of security and, for some, their hopes for the future. Kennedy's death changed the course of the nation, particularly when it came to the war in Vietnam. But JFK's murder also launched the mother of conspiracy theories, as probed in pop culture by the likes of Oliver Stone's JFK, and John and Jackie Kennedy became almost mythological figures, with every generation since lending its cinematic, TV and literary takes on the Camelot couple to the conversation. 3. The Manson family murders. The 1960s didn't end on December 31, 1969. They ended between August 8 and August 10 of that year when Charles Manson sent 5 members of his family to 2 homes, one in LA's Benedict Canyon, and the other in Los Feliz, to kill whichever piggies they found there in order to incite helter-skelter. Manson, a struggling musician, got the term from the Beatles' White Album, having interpreted the Fab Four's tunes as a signal to incite a race war. Not only did the murder of an 8½ months pregnant Sharon Tate and 4 other people at the Benedict Canyon home she had been renting with husband Roman Polanski, who was out of town, followed by the murders of Rosemary and Leno LaBianca at their Los Feliz home a night later, terrify every star and pretty much everyone else in Hollywood beyond belief. But Manson too became the most twisted kind of celebrity. He landed the cover of Rolling Stone as the most dangerous man alive, and he basked in the attention at his trial. To this day, the now 81-year-old loon remains a subject of endless fascination, largely because it's still impossible for us to get our heads around how he secured and maintained such a hold over his followers, including 3 young women who took part in slaughtering 7 people. 4. The murder of John Lennon. On December 8, 1980, the former Beatle and wife Yoko Ono were just steps away from the Dakota, on their way home from a hauntingly intimate photo shoot with Annie Leibovitz, when Mark David Chapman shot Lennon 4 times in the back. He calmly stayed at the scene and, when the cops arrived, he was reading from a copy of Catcher in the Rye. Culturally, it's too painful to think about what the musical landscape would look like had Lennon, who was only 40 when he was killed, been alive all this time. Moreover, he spent almost the entirety of his days post-Beatles crafting a message about peace. From the literal meaning of Imagine to his and Yoko's bed-in, and Lennon had so much more to do. Ono has made it her mission to remind the world what it lost and what Lennon stood for, paying the annual tribute to him, advocating for gun control in his name, and doing everything in her power to make sure Chapman never gets out of prison. 5. The 1989 murder of actress Rebecca Schaeffer, who was shot to death at her front door in West Hollywood by a stalker, eventually led to the country's first anti-stalking law when California became the first state to criminalize stalking in 1990. Her killer, Robert John Bardo, had gotten the idea to hire a PI from Arthur Richard Jackson, who stalked and stabbed actress Teresa Saldana in 1982. After he hired a detective to find Saldana's address, the Driver's Protection Privacy Act was subsequently enacted in 1994 because Bardo's investigator was able to obtain Schaeffer's address from the DMV. Saldana, who survived her attack, founded the advocacy group Victims for Victims and lobbied for both the anti-stalking legislation and the future OJ prosecutor Marcia Clark successfully got Bardo convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life without parole. Director Brad Silberling was dating Schaeffer when she was killed in his 2002 film Moonlight Mile, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Susan Sarandon, is inspired by those events.